Zipper rolls out to the right, pitches off to Taylor, and Taylor's to the 20, down to the 15, down to 10, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Touchdown, Billy Taylor! Touchdown, Billy Taylor! Billy Taylor scored a touchdown from 21 yards out. The crowd goes berserk. It was November 22nd, 1969. That they came to Barry, Michigan, all dressed in maize and blue. The words were said, the prayers were read, and everybody cried. But when they closed the coffin, there was someone else inside. Oh, they came to Barry, Michigan, but Michigan wasn't dead. And when the game was over, it was someone else instead. 11 Michigan Wolverines put on the gloves of gray, and as the organ played the victors, they laid Woody Hayes away. Under center is Wangler at the 45. He goes back. He's looking for a receiver. He throws downfield to Carter. Who's got it better than us? Nobody!
Welcome to the Michigan Man Podcast on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew, for Wolverine fans from coast to coast. Go Blue, and welcome to this week's Michigan State Visitors edition of the show. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. As we prepare for a Saturday night showdown in East Lansing, we'll hear from Spartan beat writer Graham Couch from the Lansing State Journal. First, my view from Section 17 to get us rolling. For the second week in a row, we'd be nitpicking if we found many areas of concern after another dominant performance against Indiana. Yes, we got off to a sluggish start, but made adjustments on both sides of the ball after that and rolled on. The bottom line is, we're getting better each week and getting a lot of guys game action. We'll find out soon enough just how good we are. One game at a time, though. What's great about playing Michigan State is you know that everyone will be focused in a rivalry game. The Spartans are reeling after last week's collapse at Rutgers, but they will no doubt be reinvigorated and refocused this week, knowing they are facing their bitter rival. We are 24-point favorites right now, and on paper, this matchup looks lopsided. Still, it is a rivalry game, and strange things can and have happened over the years. I expect Michigan to come out laser-focused and treat this like the rivalry game it is. At his Monday presser, interim coach Harlan Barnett said, whether it's Michigan or not, his team needs to be better.
You always are just trying to get better no matter what, a rivalry game or not. Definitely, it can bring some more focus to it, though. And we talked about having great attention to detail. And so, but far as if it's Michigan or not Michigan or what have you, we just need to start playing better. And now it's about finishing. So that's our next step. We got to finish, and we're looking forward to doing that this weekend.
He was asked what he sees when he looks at tape of Michigan.
They're very disciplined in what they do, offense, defense, and special teams. They play hard. And they have a good passing game as well as running game. They got a good balance, and they just do a good job. They do a good job of coaching those guys up and putting them in position to make plays. They're a good football team.
Barnett was asked if he has to sell this rivalry to his team because of all the new faces on the roster.
You go back to Coach Perlis. That's what I always go back to because that was my head coach here, and how he talked about it and gave the history of it and all of that. So, in today's world of transfer portal and all of that, and you're trying to get them to understand as well. You try to get them to understand because you don't really know until you play in it. And so you might, even some guys you're trying to, hey man, this is serious, this is big time. You know, it's the best rivalry in football in my opinion. And so you're trying to tell them, but sometimes they just don't know until they play. I've heard many guys say, even if it was freshmen, in their first game against these guys, say, Oh, I see what you mean now. So sometimes it don't matter. You can say all you want throughout the week. It's not until afterwards sometimes, or once they get in it, do they really understand what you've been trying to tell them.
He was asked if redshirt freshman quarterback Caden Hauser is ready to play in a rivalry game of this magnitude.
Well, he's a college football player. He understands what he was signing up for when he signed a scholarship, and this is one of the reasons why he chose to come to Michigan State is to play in games like this. He came from a big-time high school program out there in California at Bosco, and so not that Bosco is playing this type of game, but he's used to big-time atmospheres and high expectations. So expecting him to do and have a great game.
My guest today says anything could happen in a rivalry game, but this year, for many reasons, he just doesn't see the Spartans having much of a chance to pull the upset. With us next is Spartan beat writer Graham Couch from the Lansing State Journal. So don't go away. Joining us on the show today to talk about the Spartans and, of course, the big game Saturday night at East Lansing is Graham Couch from the Lansing State Journal. Great to have you back with us, Graham.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Well, the Spartans went into the fourth quarter on Saturday with a 24-6 lead over Rutgers. I was popping back and forth in the game, saw that, and thought, hey, this is going to be a good one for the Spartans on the road. And then all of a sudden that lead evaporates, and that just had to be a spirit-crushing kind of a loss, didn't it?
Yeah, I think it was. I mean, they had been, until this point, I think Michigan State had, they've done a pretty good job of hanging in there through a lot of turmoil. This is one of those where I think it's going to be tough to recover from. I think actually playing Michigan in that regard helps because you're facing it's a game that stands on its own, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think there are a lot of tough times still ahead for Michigan State this season and probably this Saturday. But in terms of preparation and focus and just sort of moving on from a really difficult game, I think that makes a difference.
Well, even though it was a really tough loss, you try to look for positives in any game, and I would say the play of Caden Hauser at quarterback had to be encouraging. His numbers were good, and he was really steady in his first start, especially with it being on the road, Graham.
I mean, he was good for the most part. I mean, he didn't, for a first start for a redshirt freshman,
Mm-hmm.
I think he showed some potential. We'll see whether he can really elevate people as time goes on. But his production was good. He put the ball in the end zone, and that's something they haven't been able to do. And so that's a start, right? When you scored one offensive touchdown in 3 weeks, actually scoring touchdowns is something to be judged on.
Well, let's talk about this Spartan offense that we're going to see on Saturday, Graham. I know we all know it's clearly not where they want it to be, but your thoughts on what they are doing well and what they're struggling with.
The offense, first of all, for a long time, there just wasn't enough juice, right?
Mm-hmm.
Their receivers weren't getting enough separation. Their offensive line not enough push. The quarterback couldn't make enough plays. I think having Hauser in there helps. He's a bigger body too. He's another guy who's athletic, who they can use a little bit on the ground. There was one really good run they made actually two runs I thought that were important times up the middle. One that got them out of trouble near their own end zone, and one for a touchdown. But so they've got, and there is some okay talent on the team at certain places. They started to run the ball okay, especially behind the left side of the line. And Nathan Carter's a solid Big Ten back, probably an upper half Big Ten back. And they've got some young receivers who I think are promising, but they don't have a lot of difference makers. Malik Carr occasionally has shown that. But when you think of teams, when you think of like title contending teams, they've got three or four guys that really cause you problems. And Michigan State does not have that.
Well, at this point of the season, most coaches fully realize the limitations of their offense and what they do best. So as a collective group, do you see, really anything from the offense that leads you to believe, hey, they can become more cohesive and effective down the stretch?
Well, I mean, the new quarterback was a start because Hauser was pretty good. I mean, it'll be interesting. I think Rutgers is a legitimate defense, and those were promising things. There is some youth in the receiving group, so maybe somebody really comes alive there. But I think ultimately they are pretty limited. What this season really comes down to two separate tracks the rest of the way. They have 3 games against Michigan, Penn State, and Ohio State, in which I think they're going to have a lot of trouble. And then they have 3 games against Minnesota, Nebraska, and Indiana, in which I think they're going to have some success. And so it'll be relative to their competition.
Well, defensively, the Spartans are led by Cal Halliday. Outstanding linebacker who had 11 tackles on Saturday, was outstanding as he always is. But talk about that defense and the key players we'll see Saturday, and also, where they've struggled as a unit at times this year.
Yeah, I mean, they actually have. I mean, it's the defense has grown into the season a little bit. I think they played pretty well. I think that's been a bright spot. I thought they were terrific for more than 3 quarters, and then against Rutgers, and then things kind of started spiraling on them, and they couldn't stop the momentum. They lost a little bit of discipline and maybe a little bit of mettle as things went wrong. But they've got some good young players in the secondary, some good veterans there too. But part of that 2022 recruiting class, 2023 group, that I think have the makings of some of those kids stick around of being an important part of whatever the next foundation is. The defensive front has been a little bit disappointing. I think that was a group that was supposed to be a strength. But they're solid at linebacker. They missed Jacoby Windmon, but young player in Jordan Hall and then Halliday, of course, 2 good linebackers, and so it's a solid, good defense that I think has taken some steps this year.
Well, we all know what's been going on around the program this year off the field, and I know the guys are working hard and giving it their all, getting ready each week for the next opponent. But with everything that just swirls around, it has to really take a toll on the guys, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. It's you can just see it, and they can put a stiff upper lip on, and there have been times that I think they've done a good job of fighting through the distractions. I've been pretty impressed with how they've stuck together, how few guys have jumped in the transfer portal, just 3 before this week. I will see how long that stays. I can't imagine before the Michigan game many guys are going to bail, but it's a tricky spot. This is not what they signed up for. It's really not that fair to them. And all of a sudden, their futures are up in the air, and their coaching staff's not going to be back, and all those sort of things that when you're 18, 19, you're excited about going someplace and playing college football for 3-4 years. You don't think about.
Well, and another thing is it's a really tough spot for Coach Harlan Barnett, but watching him, he seems like such a steadying presence, at least publicly. I'm sure he is with the team too, but. Do you think he's done a good job of trying to, right the ship to the best that he can and keep the kids focused on just playing football and getting better?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's done a pretty good job. He's got a good temperament for it. I think he's a good person. I think the players relate to that. He cares about the program, which is important when you've got somebody who's, probably not going to get to keep the job, but is in it for a short, indeterminate amount of time here. And there are things they have not done well since he's been there, and from a discipline standpoint on the field, and their special teams has been dreadful, and some of the details of stuff. So I don't want to say that they've done a good job in all aspects, but I think in terms of keeping people sort of together as best you can, and pursuing a common goal and trying to get through this, he's done a pretty good job.
Well, as tough as that loss was on Saturday against Rutgers, it's Michigan week, so that's now the focus. And despite everything that's going on and the struggles, the Spartans, as always, will not have any trouble getting up for this one, will they?
No, in a lot of ways, and we've seen this game. We saw Michigan as a 25-point favorite in the COVID year and lose this game 2 years ago. A Michigan team that I think was better than Michigan State, that Michigan State beat. And we've seen games even in tough years for MSU, or this has been a competitive game at times. So yeah, no, this is one that I think it's one of those games that feels different when you're on the field. The intensity, the hitting, all that stuff, and it's actually kind of a break for these guys in a sense that. a lot of this season has been ruined, but you still get to play this game. You still get to do things like this, and that's important.
Right, and it's a big coast-to-coast game Saturday night in Spartan Stadium, so it's going to be rocking. And for those of us that have watched this rivalry for decades, we know it's a game, as you said, that brings the best out of both teams. And despite how the season has unfolded over and over, we've seen that. Do you think the Spartans, though, still have a puncher's chance Saturday night?
No, I don't. I just don't, unless Michigan is something that does something that they have not done, which is sort of lose focus and they've been incredibly disciplined. I think they know who they are. They know what they want to do. And as long as Michigan is the Michigan team that we've seen to this point, do I think Michigan State can land a couple blows and maybe come up with a turnover or do something to keep it interesting for a quarter and a half or maybe even a halftime, so it's not horrible? Maybe. Other teams have played Michigan tough for a half. Michigan teams eventually just sort of wear you down, but the idea that Michigan State could win this game, there's just nothing we've seen thus far that suggests that.
Well, I think both of us agree, though, in this game Saturday night, the key for the Spartans is they cannot get too far behind in this one. But in any game, if you hang around, you've got a talented young quarterback in Caden Hauser. I mean, you really never know.
Usually, yeah, I know. Look, I've covered upsets on both sides, seen it happen, and so it's not that these are college kids. Usually, those upsets happen when one side doesn't respect the game as much as it should, or and I just don't think that Michigan's going to do that. The other thing is, Michigan, I think, is still eager to prove something as well. This is not, they haven't, their schedule has been really, really weak. Some of it on their own doing. The non-conference schedule is embarrassing, but their conference schedule hasn't been that tough yet either. And that's not their fault. It's just sort of the lineup of things. And so I think there's still some questions about who they are, and I think they're still out to sort of prove that week to week. And they'd probably like to lay one on Michigan State that. Because from an MSU perspective, they know what an elite team looks like. They played Washington early this year, and it went horribly. So they'll have sort of a direct comparison about what a national contender looks like. Is Michigan State any more equipped to handle that, and is Michigan truly that?
Well, final question before we let you get away, Graham. Again, we all know how tough this season has been for the program, but do you think with the right hire looking ahead as head coach that they can rebound quickly, or has the program been set back in a way that's going to take really years to recover and rebuild?
It depends on who they get, their vision. You can fix things a little faster with the portal, but the other thing is how many kids stick around. This recruiting class this year, the 2024 class, is going to be a loss other than who the new coach can bring in December and January and February and stuff. But the 2022 and 23 recruiting classes were pretty good for Mel Tucker, and there's some talent, and those kids thought that they were the keys to the program, but they've all, they're all going to have the opportunity to transfer and go somewhere else. How many of those kids stay and which ones of them do will determine just how painful it is over the next couple of years. Because if a good chunk of the core of those kids stick around together, then those kids will be upperclassmen soon. Right now they're true freshmen, redshirt freshmen, and true sophomores, and so if those kids stick around and they grow into the program, it doesn't have to be as painful as maybe it appears right now.
Well, they can forget about all that this Saturday night at least when Michigan visits East Lansing, and it's going to be, of course, a coast-to-coast game, a rocking crowd there, so should be a lot of fun. Here with us today has been Graham Couch, who covers the Spartans for the Lansing State Journal. Graham, always a pleasure having you on the show. We appreciate your time. Look forward to another visit.
Sounds great. Thanks for having me.
On Quick Hits today, Michigan opens as a 24-point favorite on Saturday night and still ranked number 2 in the nation. On Thursday's Michigan Game Day show, we'll have some interesting game day notes as usual for you, check the weather for Saturday night in East Lansing, and share the latest injury news. Our guest will be beat writer Isaiah Hole from USA Today's Wolverines Wire, so make sure you join us. That will do it for now. Have a great Wolverine week, everyone. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Until we meet again on Thursday, take care, and as always, go blue. Thanks for joining us today on The Michigan Man, here on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew. Our listener lines are open 24/7 for your calls at 313-263-4842. That's 313-263-4842. Or email us at themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. That's themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. The Michigan Man Podcast is produced at the studios of Robin Lynn Productions, Allen Park, Michigan, and is not affiliated with the University of Michigan. Go Blue!